It's an honor to be asked to do this. I'm not a mechanical engineer, even though I aspired to be one. If you had an opportunity to see my JAMB form, you will see TPEX on it. And that TPEX was because I originally had mechanical engineering there, but it was then TPEX and changed to electrical engineer. And the person that was responsible for that is here in the room. He's my immediate senior brother. He might not realize it. He studied mechanical engineering. He's a product. He was actually supervised by Professor Ofi. But I remember when I was filling the form, my dad looked at me and he said, "You know, mechanical engineers, they are very strong physique." I wasn't blessed with stature when I entered the university. He said, "Look at your brother, he is very muscular." So I was struggling with what to study. Then I saw my twin brother. He filled in his JAMB form electrical engineering. I just filled electrical engineering as well. And that's how I started studying electrical engineering. Otherwise, I would have been a mechanical engineer. And I do hope that you will give me an honorary membership as a mechanical engineer. No, thank you very much. It's really been an honor being here. Professor Ofi might not remember this story. For those who finished from UI, you remember we had the main faculty and then we had the annex. Yes. Annex was on the other side. As at the time when we entered UI, Professor Ofi's office was in the annex. Yes. And I remember then there was no bridge between the main tech and annex. So if you had to go to annex, you would have to walk a very long, tortuous journey, then start climbing. Yes. And we went a number of times to sign the courses that we needed to do. That time was TME 213, Introduction to Thermodynamics. Yes. And you needed to sign before we could register. And I remember my twin brother and I, we went the first time, we didn't see him. The second time, we didn't see him. Third time, we didn't see him. Then we put a note on his door. I said, "Sir, can you please just let us know when you'll be available?" And one of the days we went, we saw him. And then he asked the question, he said, "Do you know who wrote this note?" Excitedly, my brother and I said, "Yeah, we were the one that wrote it," thinking he was going to give us preferential treatment. And he said, "Which village are you from?" It's a pleasure to see you again, sir. Thank you for everything that you did. Today I'm going to be talking about the critical task of nation building in search of dreamers. I was once told a story about a hunter who rescued a cub, that's a young lion, from the mother, and ended up rearing that cub together with the rest of the animals that he had. There were sheep, there were goats, and that cub grew up not realizing his identity. He ate the grass that the sheep ate. He was sheltered in the home. He was not exposed to the jungle. And the story was that every time they would go to the river, and as this cub was growing, every time they go on the other side, they would see a group of animals that all of them will run away from. He didn't understand why they were running away, but he knew the wise thing to do is when you see those sets of animals, you pick race. So he would pick race. But one of those days, as he was about to drink the water from the river, he saw a reflection of himself. And what he saw of himself made him realize that he actually looked like those animals that he was running away from. And the story had it that he then jumped to the other side, they wagged their tails, and the other side welcomed him back into their fold. Unknown to him, he had been a lion in the making that has just been raised as a sheep. And that sounds like the story of our country, Nigeria. A giant that God has endowed in every sense. A giant that is still playing below his potential. That poor cub is very synonymous to our beloved country, Nigeria. Next slide, please. For those of us who have opportunity of going out, we don't sometimes call Nigeria, Nigeria. We call it Niger. And I think a few things we can say about our country is that our country is blessed. Our country is blessed. Our country is described as a giant of Africa. 28% of those that are on the Forbes 40 richest African entrepreneurs are from Nigeria. Today, Nigeria is recognized to have over 40 different mineral resources that are of economic value. If you look at our land, 33% of our land is arable. And when it comes to the language of English, we're recognized as the third largest English-speaking nation in the world, just after India and the United States of America. Professor Phil was talking about our results. Nigeria today is proven to have 206 TCF of gas. When people talk about Nigeria, they say Nigeria is an oil country. Actually, Nigeria is a gas country with some oil. The gas deposit that we have is massive. We have an additional 600 TCF of gas that we know exists in the ground, but we have not taken it through the accounting process. Countries like Australia has just about 128 TCF of gas. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as I proceed. But I'm just speaking to the fact that Nigeria is a hugely blessed country. 8th most populous country in the world. So if you look at it in every ramification, we are a blessed country. If you go to the next slide, but as a country, we do have issues. We have issues. More than 40% of our population today, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, are poor. As of 2022, the most recent official data available, our public debt was 42.8 trillion naira, about $103.3 billion. And this continues to increase. It's worrisome, it's unsustainable. In fact, today, what we hear is that the whole revenue we generate as a country is lower than the debt that we pay. According to that same Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, the official figure shows that the poverty rate in Nigeria between 1980 and 2010 rose by about 154%. The equivalent number of poor people rose from 39.2 to 112.47 million. And that's why Nigeria is described as the poverty capital of the world. This is despite a rise in the country's GDP per capita by roughly 19% and a 17.1% decline in the level of inequality. Unemployment today currently stands at about 33%, while inflation is about 20%. Over the past 2 years, our currency has depreciated by about 49% in the black market. We continue to face increased security across the country, ranging from mass abduction of people, students who are going to schools, kidnapping for ransom, armed conflict between farmers and herdsmen, armed robberies and various insurgencies that continues to ravage the northeast and the south part of the country. We're a country that have a huge problem. With an estimated population of about 217 million, we have on the average one doctor for every 5,000 people that exist in Nigeria. This is against what the World Health Organization has asked us to have. It says we must have a ratio of 1 to 600. Ours in our country is 1 to about 5,000. And if you speak to 10 doctors today, 9 of them wants to leave the country.
Yes, sir.
9 of them today are planning on how they are going to Japa, like our national chairman said. And the reality is that we're actually in a state of emergency with the availability of medical doctors. I'm not sure you understand how grave it is. The medical profession is one that thrives on tutelage and mentorship, where the new doctors that come in are actually trained by the senior doctors. So if you have a registrar who has come in, the idea is you have junior registrar, you have senior registrar, you have consultants. The consultants train the senior registrars are involved in training the junior registrar. Today, we don't have consultants and senior registrars to train the crop of people who are coming in. Even as people are graduating and they are becoming senior registrars, they are already writing exams to leave the country, consultants are leaving. We are in a very, very challenging situation as a country. And that narrative must change. To embark on a journey, you start with a map. The first thing you want to do is, where am I? And then you start figuring out where you want to go. And as you start on that journey, as you think about those changes, I want to talk about 4 cases of change that has happened, just to help us to understand that it's not rocket science. And when we start talking about the task of nation building, looking for dreamers, perhaps we are the one that have the missing link in the way in which our nation needs to be built. So the first story I'm going to start with is that of Singapore. Singapore was once a British colony, now a member of the Commonwealth. He first joined the Federation of Malaysia in its formation in 1963. 2 years later, it became an independent state. That was on August 9, 1965. Very small land, about 5.8 million people, has about 64,000 GDP per capita, is rated as the 5th on world rating of happiness. In 5 decades, Singapore has grown from a very slippery, malaria-infested swamp into an economic powerhouse, unprecedented in the history of the world, just because a man called NIMechE dreamt. Continuing this dedication to investment in human capital and encouraging foreign investment, which set Singapore in a good stead for the future. Singapore made incredible strides under Mr. Lee. He helped turn it into an economic powerhouse. Their GDP per capita in 1965, that was when they became a federation, dwarfed that of Indonesia and China, and was far ahead of Malaysia that they were joined to. By the early 1970s, Singapore was already ahead of the UK in terms of their GDP. And if you ever know the story of Singapore from a geographical point of view, they are not blessed. They have very small land, they have water all over the place, very diverse set of people. If you think about the challenges that they face, Nigeria should bury his head in shame. Mr. Lee's legacy is one of the efficient institution that has steered Singapore to some of its greatest economic successes since it stepped back from day-to-day involvement in political affairs in 2004. Let's talk about the second one, Qatar. Qatar is a country in the Middle East. Singapore, you say, is in Asia. Qatar is in the Middle East. While the emir was in Switzerland, Sheikh Hamad set a whole new direction for the country. Within 10 years, Qatar became a gas giant, and hoping to avoid the dreaded resource cost, Qatar has taken full measures to diversify its economy. So in 1998, the government built Education City, a massive campus that supports 6 American and 2 European universities, as well as research centers and think tanks. In 2003, Qatar established the Qatar Investment Authority to recycle oil and gas income into other streams. The Investment Authority has made big investments in Barclays Bank, in Credit Suisse, in Harrods, Porsche, Volkswagen, and the majority stake in the Paris Saint-Germain football team. So if you look at PSG team, you will see their emblem on it. The Qatar Financial Center was built in 2005 to develop Qatar's financial services industry. Our country believes that it can become a financial services leader for the Gulf states. It can actually become the economic powerhouse of the region, and it continues to work in that state. One thing to note about Qatar. Today, Qatar is known as a gas country. Qatar started its gas production 2 years before Nigeria. Qatar had its first export in 1997. Nigeria had its first export in 1999. I will speak more about that, but if you think about the production capacity of Nigeria and Qatar today, Qatar is almost 4 times what Nigeria has. I'll talk a little bit more about that as I speak about NLD, which is going to be the 4th story that I'll talk about. But let me talk about one that is closer home. I'll speak about the story of Rwanda. Rwanda's Renaissance. All children in Rwanda are entitled to 12 years of free education. Today, there is close to 100% countrywide enrollment in primary school. President Paul Kagame's government is credited for a growing and stable economy, expanding by 45.6% from about $5.7 billion in 2010 to 8.4 in 2016, and significantly reducing poverty levels. More than 90% of Rwanda's population is enrolled in the National Health Program, providing them access to medical care on local and national level. And the country has also invested heavily in cheaper sources of electricity to power industries and push down the tariffs. The government has also continued to subsidize electricity costs to help manufacturers' products remain competitive. I don't know what you know about Qatar, but I hope you know that and remember that Qatar went through a serious war. I'm sorry, Rwanda. I don't know how much you know about that. They went through a very serious war. They had the Tutsi and the other one. Tutsi. If you go to Rwanda today and you say, "Are you Tutsi?" They'll say, "No, we are Rwandans." There is nothing like a Tutsi or Husi. There's nothing like that. Because Kagame trends, Rwanda's economy is experiencing impressive and steady growth rates, securing more jobs and higher welfare for the country's nearly 12 million people. And between 2008 and 2012, Rwanda's annual GDP growth was 8% on the average, pulling more than 1 million people out of poverty. Analysts attribute the strong GDP growth to the country's continued commitment to reforms, creation of a good business environment, and implementing a strategy to raise productivity and services diversification. Rwanda is rapidly developing into Africa's hub for technology, innovation, and investment, transforming the country from a subsistence agricultural economy to a knowledge-based economy. If you go to the next slide, I'd like to talk about the fourth one. Please keep going. Keep going. I want to talk about Nigeria Liquefied Natural Gas Company. It's a company that we say is from dream to reality. When we talk about the story of NLNG, we usually tell that story in blocks of 30 years. We just completed 30 years of incorporation. It was a company that was incorporated in 1989, and it had over 20 years of operations. It started its operation in 1999, its first cargo in 1999. But 30 years before then, Nigeria struggled to have a company like Nigeria Liquefied Natural Gas Company, a company that will reduce the flaring that was happening in the Delta, a company that will help to monetize the molecule. And if you look at the founding investors that came together at that time, they were not the ones that eventually made it across the line. Companies like BP, I think ConocoPhillips, they were all part of the original group of people that wanted to establish that company. So we talk about our stories in blocks of 30. In that 30 years, the founding fathers of the company dreamt of a company like ours, who would help to eliminate flaring, who will help to monetize the gas that will continue to flare, and who will provide jobs. And 30 years later, we see the company. But we have started looking into the next 30 years, where we are talking about Fit for 50, because that journey actually started in 2020. And we're asking ourselves, what kind of company will we be in the next 30 years? As a company, we've had 22 years of operation that you can describe in every ramification as world class. We benchmark ourselves. That benchmark is not being done locally. We actually don't have any competition in the country. We get benchmarked against similar companies like ourselves operating worldwide. So we get benchmarked with Qatar, like I talked about, with Australia, in the United States, everywhere. Every year, Solomon does a benchmark where they look at our operation, and every year the outcome continues to show NLNG operating in the top tier 1 of the industry when it comes to operational excellence. Just to give you some insight about the company. So it's a company that is owned by 4 shareholders. The federal government of Nigeria, 49%, Shell owns 25.6%, Total Energy owns 15%, and ENI 10.4%. Today, we have 6 trains, trains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, with an installed capacity of about 22 million metric tons per annum. We produce LPG cooking gas. 40% of the cooking gas that is produced in Nigeria today comes from the LNG plant. And all our products since the beginning of this year for cooking gas dedicated to the domestic market, just helping to address some of the shortages that we have. $22 billion in terms of value of our assets. Since inception, we've generated over $114 billion revenue to the government. Since we became tax compliant, we've paid over $8 billion to the federal government in taxes. We've paid over $35 billion to our shareholders in terms of dividend. It's a company that has an excellent social performance program. Today, we're undertaking the biggest corporate social responsibility program, which is linking Bonny Island to the rest of Nigeria by road. If you want to come to Bonny Island, where our operation is, you either fly in or you come by boat. Today, we're sponsoring the construction of Bonny Bodo Road, which is about 190 billion naira. We're about 40% completed on that project. About 14 kilometers of the 39 kilometers road already asphalted. Is a road that has about 9 minor bridges and 3 major bridges. Significantly completed, one that we are committed to be able to complete. That's one of the things that we do as a company. So in the time of COVID, we are very active. Today we have a malaria elimination program that we're carrying out in Bonny Island, where we want to make the Bonny Island that has a resident population of about 250,000 malaria free. And we're working with the American aid to be able to do it. There's quite a lot of activities that we have done on that. So when it comes to social responsibility, we are huge. A few years ago, University of Ibadan was one of the 6 universities in the country where we spent $2 million in each of those universities to build centers for technology. And we still have the one in UI. I went there recently, had a look at a number of the equipment. So if you are talking about a company that you say is successful, NIMechE is a successful company. We are aspiring to grow, and our current plan is to be able to grow by 35%, moving from 22 million metric tons per annum to about 30 metric tons per annum through the construction of Train 7. That Train 7 project is already ongoing. It's a project that at peak would have about 12,000 direct people engaged on the island. NCDMB estimates that about 40,000 indirect jobs will be created. It's a project that across the entire value chain, when you look at it from upstream down to ourselves, foreign direct investment attraction of about $25 billion. And when you talk about that project in terms of local content, it is massive. 100% of construction will be done at site, 100% of the scaffolding will be done at site, a number of activities, 100% will be done at site. So it's a job that has the potential to be able to provide not just employment opportunities, but it's able to lift many people out of poverty. Why? All because some people dreamt about a company like ours. Today, that company, as I've lived many of them, was a company that continues to thrive. It's a company that 100% of its management team is Nigerian. So I'm not talking about expatriates, I'm talking about Nigerians, people like yourself and myself, who continue to run that company. It's a company today that has a staff strength of about 1,200 people. 95% of them are Nigerian. Let's talk a little bit about nation building as we then think about these 4 cases and what it means for us. What does nation building mean to us as Nigerians? The time to save Nigeria from collapse is now, and the way to go is via nation building. We must arrive at a common definition of nation building as a nation, and we must be ready to embrace the meaning. Nation building must mean constructing or structuring a national identity using the power of the state. According to Nelson Mandela, part of building a new nation means building a spirit of tolerance, love, and respect among the people of this country. In other words, change starts first with us. Nation building is a collaborative effort which must essentially lead to 3 things. Number 1, unification of the people. Number 2, political stability. Number 3, economic viability in the long run. Nation building is the process whereby a society of people with diverse origins, histories, languages, cultures, and religions come together within the boundaries of a sovereign state with a unified constitutional and legal dispensation, a national public education system, an integrated national economy, shared symbols and values as equals, to work towards eradicating the divisions and injustice of the past, to foster unity and promote a countrywide conscious sense of being proudly Nigerian, committed to the country and open to the continent and to the world. That's what nation building means to us. Anything outside of that is irrelevant. And there are a few priorities that you have for nation building as we move to the next slide. Number 1, experienced nation builders say that in addition to sufficient financial resources, international political will and time, the priorities are number 1, security. We must guarantee that citizens have a safe environment. Number 2, political reform, building a civil society, developing strong local and provincial governments, and ensuring freedom of the press and other civil liberties. Number 3, economic reconstruction, restoring economic infrastructure by establishing the lines of credit for business, restarting industry and creating jobs, especially in the agricultural sector, which accounts for most of developing countries' GDP. Number 4, strengthening legal institutions, ensuring that we have a functional and an independent judiciary. If you go to the next slide. People who venture into nation building are people who share 4 characters. You call them people who are bold. But for each of those, you can say there are people who are brave, there are people who are optimistic, there are people who are leaders, and there are people who are dreamers. Let me ask the question, where are the mechanical engineers? Where are the dreamers? Next slide. Nigeria needs dreamers, and we must wake up and dream. As mechanical engineers, we design, we test, we build, we operate machinery of all types. We also work on a variety of manufactured goods and certain kinds of structure. If you think about the Industrial Revolution, it represents the widespread replacement of manual labor by machines that began in the 18th century, and it still continues in some other parts of the world today. The changes brought by the Industrial Revolution overturned not only traditional economies, but also whole societies. Economic changes caused far-reaching social changes, including the movement of people to cities, the availability of a greater variety of material goods, and new ways of doing business. From the foregoing, you can see virtually that every aspect of life is touched by mechanical engineering. If something moves, if something uses energy, a mechanical engineer was probably involved in its design or its production. And let me talk a little bit about some of the contributions that mechanical engineers have made. If you go to the next slide. Bernard Shaw says, you see things and say why. I dream things that never were, and I say, why not? Rather than ask the question why, which is an emotional question, he said the conversation should actually be, why not? Why not? The Industrial Revolution began in Great Britain during the last half of the 18th century and spread through the regions of Europe to the United States during the following century. It represents the widespread replacement of manual labor by machines that began in the 18th century and still continues in some parts of the world. The Industrial Revolution, as we see today, was the result of many fundamental interrelated changes that transformed agricultural economies into industrial world. Where are the mechanical engineers of our time? Where are the dreamers? As I reflect on the story of the Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas Company, can I say that the success of that company is a clear demonstration of what we as Nigerians are capable of doing. We need more institutions like this across all sectors of our society, from telecommunications to agriculture, from government to manufacturing. We need our infrastructures to work again. We need to revive our economy again. Like the lion who was raised with the hunter's pet, we need to awake to who we really are, the giants of Africa. We need to take our place among the League of Nations. For these, we are in search of men and women who will rise up to the call. The call to build a nation of our dreams and assume the responsibility of the process. Nations cannot be built solely from the top down, but requires the active participation of ordinary citizens in the shaping of a common political and social will. It is men and women who will dare to stand up to the challenges and show commitment to the communal good. It is a search for dreamers whose dreams burn in them perpetually. Men and women who are ready to make the sacrifice to see a transformation that is birthed in their lifetime. We search for those who will step out far beyond their ethnic and religious affiliation to build social structures that generations will be proud of. Men and women who would strive to leave a legacy in the course of their daily tasks and help shape the narrative around disciplined delivery in this part of the world. We search for dreamers who will stretch their innovative abilities and not be daunted by the mountain of economic and social issues that surround us. People who will reel out solutions that shape humanity for good. Those who will not be afraid of stumbling like the Wright brothers or scared to drop a man on the moon even when they know that they might not be able to make it back. We need dreamers who will be bold in proclaiming and chasing their dreams like Martin Luther King Jr. The task of nation building is for all of us. It is our time to write our names in history book as men and women who change the narrative of our people. Here seated are professionals who have the competence, the character that is required for nation building. You have the tenacity and will necessary to drive change from your own space. You have the capacity and the capability to stir a revolution in stabilizing our nation's institutions. Your contributions will help build that robust and resilience we desire in our institutions. Seated here are leaders with burning visions and concepts. My prayer is that you should not allow your vision to die within you. Let me round up by sharing the story of the sage and smart kid. If you can go there. There was once a wise man and a smart little boy. The boy was driven by just one simple desire, and is to expose the wise old man as a fool. The boy had a plan. He had captured a very small and very fragile bird in the forest. And with the bird cupped in his hand, the boy's scheme was to approach the old man and ask him, "Old man, what do I have in my hands?" To which the old man would reply, "You have a bird, my son." Then the boy would ask, "Old man, is the bird dead or alive?" And if the old man replied that the bird was dead, the smart boy would open his hand and allow the birds to fly. But if the old man replied that the bird was alive, the smart boy would crush the bird inside his compound and crush it until at last the bird dies. Then the boy would open his hand and say, "See, old man, the bird is dead." And so as the story goes, the smart boy went to the old man and said as he had planned, "Old man, what do I have in my hand?" The old man replied, "You have a bird, my son." "Old man," the boy said, his voice dripping with disdain, "is the bird alive or is it dead?" Whereupon the old man looked at the boy with his kindly old eyes and replied, "The answer is in your hands."
Okay.
It's in your hands. I think the answer to the nation building today is in our hands. Let me just round up with 3 lessons that I think this story teaches. Number 1, we can determine our destiny as a nation if we are committed. Number 2, The power to change our future is in our hands. And number 3, we must use it. For the time is now. The time is now. For us, for future generation, for posterity, that time is now. And I pray that we all wake up to the giant who we are. We stand up as mechanical engineers, the pride of all engineering, and we play our role in the rebirth of our nation, shaping a new identity, having dreams that will change us and set us on the right path. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much. Engr Leye Falade. That was so deep. Wow.